Okay. Most important question. Everybody wants to know, what is the meaning of life? That was a joke. Don't answer that. That's too cliche.
Thanks.
I thought I'd throw that in there.
Thanks.
Give you the option. Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Paul Simonich, and I'm a sergeant with the police department. Hey Chaplain is the police wellness podcast, and we cover the best topics about career, health, and family so you can be healthier. If you're new here, you can start right here, or go back and listen to any episode. There's so much experience and wisdom that does not naturally filter its way down to every patrolman, and we'd like to fix that. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain give you their hard-earned wisdom so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm a listener of the show, and over the course of listening to many of the episodes, I had several burning questions. I wanted to talk to Chaplain and interview him on his own podcast, kind of flip the table and point the microphone in the other direction, and get his ideas and thoughts from his own perspective and not through anybody else's filter that he was interviewing. I wanted to know more about the captain of the ship, where he started in life, where he was from maybe, where he went to school, what made him choose his career path, and ultimately what I discovered was that police officers and chaplains have a bit of the same calling. Knowing what you know about policemen, and you've probably been around in your chaplaincy enough to have seen a class from the very beginning when they're brand new, I guess, recruits and trainees, and then they get out into the field. You've probably seen enough evolutions of those. So seeing how the sausage is made, as it were, would you encourage your children or your grandchildren, because I know you just had a granddaughter, grandbaby not that long ago, to be police officers?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a son. I don't think he has any interest in it, but his personality reminds me of our detectives, or at least the healthier ones.
As a sergeant, I could ask a whole bunch of follow-up fireback questions on that one, but I think I'll, in the interest of...
But personality type and intelligence level and all of those good attributes, I'm like, wow, I'm meeting a lot of people that remind me of this one particular son.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have a calling for it, I don't want him, because in order to get to detective, he almost certainly will have to do several years on the street, right. And I think he would hate that. I think it would chafe on him. He's one of those that very first opportunity he would test, and probably be at the top of the list. But he would get out of patrol as quick as he could. Right.
Which wouldn't be a bad thing necessarily.
No, but if he doesn't feel called to it, I don't want to put him through it. And then my youngest, my daughter, in fact, she's 15 years old, and I took her for her first, not really a ride along, but she went to dispatch and did a shift with dispatch. I heard it went well. Oh, I think she loved it.
And maybe you'd said that.
She's like, how quick can I get back? And so she loves that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so I could easily see her being drawn to participate as a first responder of some kind, or to marry a first responder. I could see her leaning that direction.
Drawn into that circle.
Yeah, she's 15.
Yeah.
All of that could change in a year, but I could see her being interested in that. My oldest, he has some health problems, but mercy, I've always kind of seen him as a firefighter type.
Yeah,
and so I could imagine that, and so I am in no way discouraged about the state of first responders or specifically law enforcement. Yes, it can chew people up and spit them out, but not everybody. And I've seen young people, idealistic, hopeful, that they have to kind of ride that roller coaster. You do that big drop, and boy, you drop into all kinds of cynicism and frustration and moral injury. That this is not. I thought I was going to be helping people, and I just go back to the same house, and it's just the same old thing over and over. They go through all of that. But many of them can come back out of that. Not all of them do. But that's part of what I feel called to, is helping people come back up the other side.
It's all about the outlook.
Yes.
I mean, I've probably been there myself, where I'm like, why am I even here? Why this is pointless. But now I don't want to say refound a purpose or whatever, but I just kind of turned a page on that. And, I look for different challenges within the sector that I'm in. So it is basically how I tried to flip that coin and look forward again.
And if I can say too, that is something that other cops notice. When somebody bounces back, that will, because you have people that like their friend group, they all try to bid the same shift,
right,
and that kind of thing. But sometimes you'll have people, you'll have police officers that'll talk about, well, I want to go work with this person because they're positive, because I think they care about me, because they have a different attitude than all the others. And there are people who work on your shift or would like to work on your shift because of your attitude. And so there are others that also attract people like that. And there's people who repel, like, well, I don't want to work on the same shift as that person, because of their attitude.
We'll leave them unnamed for now. Maybe after the show, we'll have a sidebar. Are you from Kansas City area originally?
Almost, yes. I was born in Lawrence, married in Lawrence. I lived in a small town just north of Lawrence, Kansas. And so for those who aren't from this area, that's, a 30-minute drive down the highway. And so my dad actually worked in Kansas City my entire childhood. He worked for the airlines and was a mechanic for TWA and for American Airlines. And so we were always near and around Kansas City. But I also kind of grew up in Lawrence and Topeka.
Oh, yeah. So you're a Jayhawks fan then?
Yeah, natural Jayhawk fan. Born in Lawrence, and I don't actually have any family that attended the University of Kansas, but we're all KU fans. My 100-year-old grandmother watches every KU game, doesn't miss a single one.
She's actually 100?
Yeah, she'll turn 100 about the time this episode comes out.
That's impressive. It's not every day you meet anybody that is 100 years old. Being an LEO, law enforcement officer like myself, is often described as a calling. Can you tell us about your calling as a pastor? Kind of like, were there circumstances that produced your desire to become a pastor, or reverend, or chaplain? Or was it just something that you always wanted to do from the beginning when you were a child or something like that?
That's an excellent question. I did not want to go into ministry. I had a preacher at our church. He was this Cajun from Louisiana, and he told me that I was going to grow up and be a preacher someday. And I'm like, no, sir, you are mistaken. And really all the way up through high school, I was pretty convinced that I was going to be an aerospace engineer. I had a scholarship to a Big 12 university and was like, that is what I'm doing. I love math and science and aerospace type, aircraft and rockets and that kind of thing.
Lots of calculus.
I was down for it. I was like, that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a scientist. I'm going to make lots of money-ish. I was going to go work for Elon Musk, although I didn't know who Elon Musk was at the time. And so that's where I thought my life was going to go. But in high school, my sister actually received a piece of mail inviting high schoolers to go to do missionary trips. And I saw that and responded to it. I kind of felt like God put that in my hands, even though it wasn't directed to me. It wasn't addressed to me. And so I went and I served for a summer down in southern Mexico, down in Oaxaca and Mexico City. And then the following summer went to the Philippines and served in Manila and just did missionary work. I mean, nothing big, nothing too important, just helping other missionaries and just kind of being supportive like that. But that convicted me.
Yeah.
And I felt like, okay, maybe God does want me to go be a missionary in China or something like that. So I derailed my plans, went to Bible college, went to seminary basically, and thought, well, maybe God's going to send me over somewhere and I'll do like maybe Bible translation. So this is early. So they were using computers, but it wasn't automatic. You still had to like actually translate, from Hebrew and Greek into the target language, line by line. And that took an entire lifetime to translate a new translation of the Bible. So that's what I figured I would be doing. And along the way, God moved me a little bit further, and I kind of fell in love with the local church. I liked working with people and helping people. And instead of being in China, God ended up with his sense of humor putting me back in Kansas. And so I'm not far. I live one county over from where I grew up. And so haha, joke's on you. I'm a minister at a church. And in fact, the church I'm at currently, I've been here for 24 years.
Wow.
And so that is not what I expected to do.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel like the story of Jonah, where Jonah was told to go do something and he didn't do it. He ran the other way, and God swallowed him with a fish.
Out right where he's supposed to be.
I kind of feel like if I tried to go be an engineer or anything else, God would just spit me back at the doorstep of the church.
Where did you attend, I guess, seminary or Bible college?
And in our church, in the churches that I attend, we do a lot of our seminary training at the undergrad level. So instead of going to like KU and then going to seminary, I just went straight to a Bible college.
It's all in one,
right? And so I was doing classes on counseling and Bible languages and actually studying the Bible and that kind of stuff at the undergrad level.
So you're fluent in Aramaic, then, is what you're telling me?
No, I do read Greek.
Really?
I'm almost useful at a Greek restaurant.
Okay.
And so
all right, you're coming to the next Greek festival when we go.
That's right. And so a little bit of Aramaic, a little bit of Hebrew, but my specialty, my interest was Greek, and I took 6 semesters of Greek language when I was in college. And so I did that at the undergrad level. I went to Joplin, Missouri, to Ozark Christian College, not to be confused with College of the Ozarks. That's a totally different thing. But Ozark Christian College is an undergrad, and now they have a graduate program there in Joplin, Missouri. And so I spent some time down there and absolutely loved it. Felt like that was just a fantastic education. I was in Bible college in the late 90s.
So you're almost fluent in Hebrew. So when the Israelis start giving a press conference, you can you can follow right along.
No. In fact, I work with a guy who actually knows Hebrew really well, and that's just like, wow, that's really exposing my lack of fluency there. Because it's like, if I have a question, I could look it up. I have the resources. I can figure the stuff out for myself. But it's so much easier just to ask him.
So you have enough to maybe kind of loosely follow a conversation to get the context of what's going on?
When you learn Bible languages, it's more about learning how to read it. That's how it's usually taught.
Sure.
And so, like I said, at a Greek restaurant, I might not understand spoken Greek, but I might recognize the words if I read the menu.
Sure.
And so that's typically the way that would work.
Okay. So then on the topic of seminary, Bible college, and I have to ask, because I've wondered this of many clergy that I've met throughout my life, do you have any kind of wild party stories that happened or went on while you were at Bible college or seminary?
Okay. On the one hand...
Ones that won't get you in trouble anyways.
Yeah. On the one hand, the Bible college, that's a conservative Christian environment. We had even in the 90s, we had curfews and it was all very responsible and very socially conservative. On the other hand, it's also a dorm full of 18 and 19-year-old boys.
Right.
And so the most ridiculous, stupid things, pranks and goofing off and wasting time. And that was at the beginning of the computer age. So, we'd get somebody's computer set up and we'd play computer games all night. Yeah. And so it's still young kids. But at the same time, I met some people there that even at 18 or 19 years old, they were just really upstanding individuals.
Really?
I also met some scoundrels, and those that all comes out in the wash. A lot of those guys didn't actually pan out. But
probably like the bell curve of just most of you right in the middle and some others on the extremes.
Yeah, I frequently like to say that some of the most upstanding and outstanding people I've ever met are people in the ministry.
Yeah.
Also, some of the biggest goofballs I've ever met, some of the weirdest weirdos I've ever met are also people in the ministry. And so it's the whole bell curve. And there's people who I would love to be associated with and people who I would never want to be associated with.
That's funny. It's almost like you're a cop.
Yeah, yes.
I could say the same thing. And not for the people that I meet out in the field, just other police officers.
Yeah. Well, and that's the overlap in law enforcement and being in the ministry. There's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of your neighbors. They're happy you exist, but they're not looking to invite you to the party.
Right.
And
I
so
feel like that too.
So there's some similarities there, and I've always felt a kindred spirit with cops. I mean, even long before I thought about being a chaplain, I always felt like, boy, there's some overlap there.
Top 3 training, either, I don't know, seminars or conferences that, like I said, if you rub the genie's lamp and poof, you could go to that one. I won't say all expenses paid, but
for me,
sure.
Oh.
Or have you gone to them, I guess? You've already gone to the ones that you would absolutely 100% go to.
But I'll say that I don't feel I don't feel like there's something missing. I feel like I have found such good trainings and I'm very autodidactic. I like to just learn on my own. And so I have found really good resources out there, and I just have this huge appetite for it. And so I'm constantly reading and learning, and anything that anyone ever says about a cop or, officer wellness or whatever, I just soak it up.
Soak it in.
And so I don't have like a gaping hole, like, oh, I've always wanted to do such and such a training. There's no reason to ever put a chaplain in the stack to do entry into a building or something like that.
You should.
And so I don't need to rappel out of a helicopter. There's a lot of things I don't ever need to do.
Yeah.
And so the things that I want, I have mostly been able to find adequate resources. What I really have an appetite for, what I really desire, is to tag along with cops while they're doing training. I'd like to audit several trainings, including ones our own department offers, where I would just like to be the fly on the wall or be the volunteer that gets handcuffed or whatever. I have never in my life been handcuffed.
I'm sure that. Okay. I'm sure I'll pull some strings. When the SOU, the SWAT guys do the officer survival training for the next academy, I'll see what I can do to get you as one of the decoys or participants, role players.
Yep.
Role players.
Yep.
Yeah, they always have a need for those. There have been.
See, I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that. I have set in on sergeants' classes. I teach at the academy and have set in on other people teach at the academy. Right. Anything that I can pick up, I'm just curious. I want to learn. I want to know what cops go through. So.
We actually kind of would, I think he would do it on his own free time, but there was a fire captain. I think he's been promoted since I left the SWAT team, but he was the craftiest guy. He would hide in the places that we would never check or expect, and he made us pay for it. Or made the recruits pay for it. Out at the lake, he'd climb up on a stone wall, and they would walk literally. He was a good 10 feet off the ground, and they would walk right underneath him, and they wouldn't think to look up because they're new and whatnot.
Sure.
And he used the FX ammunitions on them once they turned their back to him. So he's very crafty. So you've got some big shoes to fill.
I've got an active shooter training story. I did it one time, and they were using they weren't using Simunitions. They were using like a air gun with no ammunition in it. So you get a puff of air if you're within several feet of them. And I was playing one of the people hiding, basically, but I had a flashlight on me, and the flashlight had a strobe. And so I'm in a closet, and I'm at a dead end. I have no way to retreat. And I hear him coming. He's like, just don't look in the closet. Don't look in the closet. Well, sure enough, the closet door opens. I see the gun, and I'm not going to accost him. I almost grabbed it, Right. But what I did, as soon as he cleared the corner, I hit him with the strobe right in the eyes, which his response was to shoot me in the crotch with the air gun. I think I'd rather just have been murdered straight up than.
I've seen that happen a few times. It's funny, like you hate to laugh because you definitely don't want to be that guy that on the receiving end, but you're also like that's pretty funny. Sorry, there, guy. The recipient's usually not too happy though. I've seen
no
a couple times.
Oh, I felt it. Yep.
Yeah. So in my 19 years on the police department, you, I think, are the most active chaplain that I've experienced. I guess my question is how can we get more involvement from our other chaplains? Not trying to be necessarily detrimental to them, because I know everybody's got their personal lives or they still got their churches to tend to and business to do that way. But do you think that there's besides asking them, or I don't know, maybe this has just kind of been your, I guess for lack of a better word, your calling or your passion. I don't know if there's a way to instill that in anybody else, or get them to kind of come along with you.
Thinking in terms of calling is probably the right way, because we can recruit chaplains. We can assign them tasks. They're ultimately volunteers, so you're not really assigning anything. Right. You're just asking, would you please try to do this as much as you can?
Yeah.
I feel like this is what God wants me to do. And so I am very happy as a volunteer to spend quite a bit of time going to the police department, going to roll calls, doing ride-alongs, going to trainings, teaching at the academy. I was in a meeting the other day, and all the cops were sitting around and said, "Hey, look, we're all paid to be here." And I raised my hand, actually, I'm doing
not entirely accurate. You're 99% right, but
yeah. And so there are thousands of chaplains across the country who are doing exactly what I'm doing.
Really?
They are volunteering their time, and they are getting heavily involved, and they're building rapport with cops before there's a crisis. But there's tens of thousands of chaplains who are on the books who are doing something less than that. They're not being as proactive. They're not being as involved. They're kind of waiting, kind of the break glass in case of emergency.
Sure, right.
There's a role for that. We need that. If we have an F5 100%. Tornado, we need more than one chaplain.
Right.
We need a dozen chaplains to cover.
Need more.
Right. And chaplains are going to be like anybody else. They're going to have seasons in their life where there's going to be a season where they can give a lot of time and a season where they can't give a lot of time. If I had been doing this when my kids were young, it would have been impossible.
Right.
But now my kids are all reaching adulthood, and I've got a lot more time. And so this is something that I can work into my schedule better than I would have 15 years ago.
And did the podcast, did that kind of come out of, I don't want to say boredom, but like your kids have grown and maybe moved out of the house, and now you have time that you're just kind of like, I don't know what to do with my time because I don't have to go to
I'm a pretty
soccer
busy
practice.
Guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a pretty busy guy, but when I became a chaplain and then when I started the podcast, I deliberately cut out other things. And so the power of saying no is important. And so there are things I'm invited to go do, things that might be prestigious or, not necessarily lucrative. A lot of ministry stuff's volunteer, but there's a lot of offerings, a lot of opportunities that I say no to because I've already made a commitment. I'm going to be a chaplain at this police department, and I'm going to reach more cops by doing this podcast. And that's what it is. And this podcast is probably not one that's ever going to make me money. I have monthly supporters who just barely cover like my hosting costs, fees and my software subscriptions and that kind of stuff. And so I'm not making any money off of this. Right. It's kind of budget neutral, which is great. I'm so thankful for that. Yeah. So it's not a matter of having time. I'm at a point in my life where I can invest in this time-wise, and I say no to other things. And I have church leadership here that supports it. They want me involved. That's a way for someone who's naturally introverted like me to make myself go out and interact with our community. They support that. They want that. They hold that up as an example. Like, let's have all the church people, volunteer and get out and meet people and be involved in their community more. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So at your church thing, are you the only pastor, or they're like?
I'm. You could maybe call me the senior pastor. Okay. I've been here a long time, but we have another pastor on staff. We have other staff members, and we have leaders, lay leaders that are, in a layer above me that I would answer to, that I'm responsible to. So I answer to a group,
like a board.
Yes,
I guess.
Yep.
In another podcast you were on fairly recently, you said something to the effect of you went into the police chaplaincy assuming the worst. What did you mean by that necessarily? And then a kind of a follow-up to that, were your assumptions above or below those expectations, or were they like right on the mark?
So I've done pastoral counseling, crisis counseling, that kind of work for almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And so I long ago got over the shock of having, sweet little innocent grandma walk in and then reveal horrible things from her life story. And so I no longer look around and just assume that people are all just
you can't judge the book by the
plain,
cover.
right, plain vanilla. Now, a lot of people have very shocking stories of things that either they have done or things that have been done to them. And I honestly, I've had everything in the chair you're sitting in right now. I have had everything confessed to me except for first-degree murder.
Wow.
And so I can't think of a category that someone has not said, well, this is something I have done in my life at one point.
I've got a desire to get out of this chair. It's getting a little hot.
So I have a very friendly version of pessimism where I love people, but I don't assume that you've always been good, and I don't need you to have always been good for me to like you.
Sure.
So I'm assuming that people I like most in the world have done some things that they'd rather never get out. Right.
Yeah.
Knowing that, this noble profession of law enforcement is this wonderful thing. I don't need perfect people to be in those jobs. They need to be people with integrity. They need to be people who are obeying the law and upholding the law and doing that even-handedly. But to think that they're going to be flawless or not have character flaws or other, things that are just they're embarrassed about, I mean, that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's not overly reasonable.
Yeah.
It's not a reasonable expectation to say like this pastor or this police officer is 100% perfect. They've never done a horrible bad thing in their life or whatever. So I guess that's what
there's a very real chance that they go home and drink too much or yell at their kids or whatever. And I shouldn't be someone who's naive to that. And then when I do find out, clutch my pearls and be all offended. I kind of assume that everyone I talk to, including cops, have some baggage. And I'm actually, that's what I'm here for, is to maybe help with some of that,
You describe yourself as the garbage dump that the garbage can goes into. How do you, I was just thinking of that. I'm like, as a police officer, we see a lot of stuff that we probably shouldn't see or that don't, isn't happy-go-lucky. But I couldn't, and then I just couldn't imagine then having it be your responsibility to listen to or, reach out to people that say, hey, Chaplain, I saw some really messed up stuff, or I did something I probably shouldn't have, or what. I don't know how you deal with that, but I guess. So maybe that'll lead me to one of my other questions. But do you have any unhealthy coping mechanisms or stuff like that? And what are they, if you care to share?
Yeah, no, my natural go-to when I'm stressed is to eat too much. And so I've been overweight most of my adult life. My weight's fluctuated wildly. Here a couple of years ago, I lost about 110 pounds, and I've been maintaining that.
I've noticed. Good for you, by the way.
But I could lose another 40 or so, and I'm always at risk of putting that back on because I've done this before. I've lost a lot of weight and I've gained a bunch of weight. And in fact, I kind of joke around about it a little bit that, hey, you can tell how I'm handling my stress by what set of clothes I'm in this year. Yeah. And so that is my go-to thing. I don't drink or smoke. I don't fool around, but man, just having
time for an extra
seconds
burrito
of meat potatoes, that's kind of my go-to thing. And I have other things. I'm prone to depression. I'm prone to melancholy. I can really turn inward and kind of shut myself off and isolate myself from people, get to where I kind of feel sorry for myself and that kind of thing. That's a very easy thing for me to do. I feel like I'm learning really good tools to combat that. And I've got really good people around me. I keep surrounding myself with people who want good things for both me and themselves. And so that's extraordinarily helpful. Yeah. But boy, it's one of those there, but for the grace of God go I. When I see somebody that depression gets the better part of them, that strikes a chord with me.
Sure.
And so it is a dangerous thing. And where I'm being the trash can, the other trash cans dump into, I have to actively, what am I doing to work that out, get that out? Am I exercising? Am I eating well? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I talking to people? And I have people I talk to that I can then empty all that out. And I have to take the same medicine I tell my cops. I tell my cops, you need to go talk to somebody. We need to make this normal in our department where we're going to do debriefs and you're going to talk to peer support. You're going to come talk to the chaplain. That's just going to be normal. And it hasn't been, but it needs to be, and it needs to be for the chaplain too.
That's kind of especially after a critical incident, that's kind of a tricky thing. I've experienced. We had an incident and that I was involved in, and then you go, hey, you got to go talk to the psychologist. I'm like, okay, but
and we actually have some good ones in Kansas City. But not everybody has that good experience.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't a bad experience necessarily from the psychologist's point of view, but in the moment I wasn't in a good place, and I didn't realize it until the psychologist had pointed it out. And I was like, oh, okay. So maybe it's not, maybe just, not thinking about what had just happened a day or two before is going to cut it. So how you, like I said, how you do it, I don't know.
Well, this is probably a good place to make a cut, and we'll just do a part 2 next week. Why don't you go ahead and do the transition?
On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
But it's better to lose them a little bit short term than to lose them permanently long term.
I agree.
And I think that is the logic that we use, but it's not a solution. It's what you're looking for is, can we keep these two things in balance? Can we keep officers mostly healthy most of the time, or can we keep, fully manned unit out there on the street where they have proper support for one another? Probably can't have both 100%.
I'm telling you, Pastor, I'm getting you to a choir practice. We'll work out not all the issues, but we can work out a bunch of them.
I'll be the designated driver.
We'll rent a bus and or a limo that maybe you can sign off and you can drive it or something, or we'll borrow one of the department's buses, and the chief's okay with it. The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you liked this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.